mourn the death of their children. Your situation, completely abusive. I think we can all agree on that. But, some other people who let their children go through the sickness process and die, they're sad. How is it that in some religions and theologically, they're all apparently looking at the same Bible, some can come away with that we should leave it to God and prayer and faith, and some do not interpret it that way? How do you counsel on that?
If I could answer that question.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I mean, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. It's a powerful story. I had written down right before you started speaking, I hate when faith becomes a weapon. And then you spoke about faith becoming a weapon. It's personally painful to me to watch the many ways we turn faith into a weapon to create spiritual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. When I think at its root, faith, spirituality is about love and building up one another. Unfortunately, we have an insidious ability to turn it into something else. I can't speak for all faith, obviously, and how different people take the different texts. Some of us have different sacred texts. Some of us understand the authorities of those texts differently. I think that it's important to understand that Idaho sits at the forefront of a very challenging question about the freedom of religion across the spectrum, whether we're talking about human rights or whether we're talking about faith healing and whatnot. And we have this fear, this slippery slope. Janet and I were speaking beforehand about slippery slopes. Somehow we think that releasing a single protection that probably should never have gotten in there in the first place is going to slide us all the way to the government telling us exactly how to raise our children. I have 4 children. I have to buckle them up in the car. I should, but I also legally have to do it. There are all sorts of ways in which we mandate the care of our children, and that's part of our government, and it's a good function of our government. And I hate to think that somehow faith gets you a get-out-of-jail-free card with regards to neglect and abuse. Something that can be so beautiful and wonderful turned putrid and horrible. And I can understand the human psyche's need for fundamentalism in any level. Somebody who will tell you they know the exact answers to life. How nice is it, in an insidious, horrible way, to be able to say, I know exactly why that baby died. I know exactly what's good and what's bad and what's evil. We live in a much more ambiguous world than that. But there's an attractiveness to somebody who will tell you they know all the answers. So it's hard for me to want to impugn the character and personality of a person of faith, even when I don't understand their faith. And I think that's the place where legal protections are required to help those who cannot advocate for themselves.
What were conversations like in your family? Did you say it was your mother didn't necessarily believe in conventional medical treatments, and maybe your father did? I mean, was there conflict and conversation in your household about it?
No, not at the. I'm the third of 4 children, so by the time I remember life,
yeah, they just picked up the pacifier and put it back in.
Yeah,
right.
right. We'd gone through that learning curve. Okay. And I want to be respectful for what stories are my right to share and what are not. I know that I think she would be fair for me to say that as on where she is now, she doesn't quite understand and get where she once was. But that's her journey, and I think it's hard. I try to talk to folk who still live in that world, and they are good, wonderful, caring people in so many different ways, and then we disagree very strongly on that subject. That's not the only subject in which I find that's the case, but that is one. And I think that for them, you know, I mean, to get told by everyone in your world, this is how systemic sin exists. You get told by everyone in your world that this is what's true, and you grow up believing it's true, that to be a person of faith, you have to trust. You have to trust your faith to be able to heal, and that God is that powerful, and God is able to do that, and that anything less than that is not trusting God. And if your whole world tells you that's true, then you grew up thinking it's true in the fiber of your being. And it takes gentle hands to shift that worldview. So it's a different thing about how we can talk about this with adults versus how we can talk about it when we're protecting children.
And that was my final.